So today we're starting drift prep, even though the season started this weekend. I'm switching from an electric fan back to the factory clutch fan style, just because they push more air and I'm tired of taking more cool down laps than I need to. So I'm also going to be replacing this. It's the water pump. It's already a good metal finned water pump, but when I went to the electric fan, I cut the threads off that attach the clutch fan. So I've got all my parts over here. I've got the new clutch fan. I've got the new water pump. I went with the Stewart pump. So this should flow a lot more water than the one that's currently in there. It's technically an upgrade. So just putting that pump in, and I've got this. It's an e34 V8 clutch and just the standard fan. That's the part number. Not too expensive to go back to the stock setup. I had this laying around luckily, so got my shroud, got my fan, got my clutch, got the water pump. So I just gotta finish up here. I already got this out obviously, and I'm just gonna clean up this area just so the new O-ring on the new water pump seals good. And I have to put the take this shroud off and put the plastic shroud back on. The main reason that I'm doing this right now, because this was honestly fine. I had no problem taking cool down laps. I like mechanical sympathy. I put a lot of time and energy into the car, so anytime that I can give it a break while I'm at the track, I'll give it a break. But this guy, which is my expansion tank, has a crack right there. I had purchased it on eBay. I didn't have anybody make this for me. So I'm just taking it off now while I'm doing the water pump and everything, and going to bring it over to Sean over at Ringleader Racing, who helped me do all the turbo kit stuff on this. And I'm just going to have him weld up the crack. Maybe fix my wastegate, because the wastegate is also just, it vents directly to the downpipe. There's no dump tube on it right now, so it gets awfully warm over in this corner, as you can tell by all the black. But I'd like to fix that. I also have to take the manifold off and have a crack welded on that. So I'll probably try and get the dump tube fit before I start taking it apart, because if I can't get the dump tube to fit, then I'm gonna have to bring the whole car to him anyways to have him redo the dump tube. So yeah, I'm just going to do the water pump today, and I'll probably deal with the manifold stuff another day. It's not going to be super fun. I don't have to take the motor out, but I do have to remove this motor mount side, and, well, I have to remove both the motor mounts, just unhook them from underneath, and then tilt the motor this way so that there's enough room to sneak the manifold out between the head and the strut tower. So that's going to be the worst part of this job. I was thinking about just buying a new manifold, so that way I don't have to go through the hassle of taking it off, getting it repaired, putting it back on. And I was going to change my wastegate setup and move it from back in the corner to up front here. But the more I look up here, the more I think I should probably just fix this manifold. I don't know. We'll see what the fabricator says when I bring it to him. Because if I do a different manifold, I'll have to redo these lines, this drain line for the turbo, and I might not even be able to reuse where the drain goes into the timing cover, because of where the new wastegate location would be. So I've got some thinking to do and some discussing to do with my fabricator, but the water pump job and switching over to the clutch fan, that's super simple. I've been here for maybe 45 minutes and I've already got everything apart and ready to be swapped over to the new parts. So I'm going to get to that now. Don't mind my dirty motor. As I always said, as long as nothing's dripping on the ground, it's fine. But the goal is to clean up this surface where the O-ring goes for the water pump and just make sure it's nice and smooth and there's no debris in there. Just make sure that the water pump is going to seal good. Then I will throw the fresh water pump in, and then we can put the new clutch and fan on the new water pump. Always lube your O-rings. Which way did it go? Yep, it goes that way. You don't want to watch this part. So I worked on it for about 6 hours today. I got the water pump, radiator, and fan all back and installed. I know this is kind of far away. I'm going to basically make a little plastic shield that goes over the top of this. So it's essentially going to, make the, whatever this thing's called, gonna make this. Wow, my brain is, it's farted. My brain farted. It's a shroud. It's a fan shroud. So I'm gonna extend the top of the fan shroud out further towards the engine, so that it gets closer to the fan, and then I'm going to run these on top of it so that there's no way that the fan can ever catch these. If the fan hits anything, it's just going to hit more plastic. The manifold is out. It was kind of annoying. I had to use the jack to jack up the motor off of the motor mounts. You can see there's no bolts on it. But all the bolts came out pretty easily. That's what I get for using fresh hardware when I put the motor together. But I'm all done for today. Now I got to bring the manifold and the expansion tank to Sean over at Ringleader Racing so that he can fix the cracks in both. All right, so we're back and it's finally time to prep for drifting. I purchased my ticket for Lock City literally 5 minutes ago. You like how I looked at my watch that's not there? 5 minutes ago. But now it's crunch time because my car is taken apart. And it's for a good reason. The reason I stopped driving it over the winter time was a crack right here in my coolant expansion tank. So I had this joint welded up. And then I also have a crack. Bring this up here so it's in the light. In my turbo manifold, right there. And it goes all the way around the tube. I brought it to my fabricator and he said he could fix it, but he wasn't sure if it will last. Because obviously up in the collector, you can't really see how far around the crack goes. And there's not really any way he's going to be able to get in there with a welder to weld the crack if it is actually cracked further around the pipe. So he said he could make it sound better, but it's probably going to crack again and I should get a new manifold. So I reached out. This is a CX Racing manifold. I reached out to CX Racing. They told me that I should not let oil touch the manifold. That's the reason why it cracked. They could tell by the pictures that oil has been dripping on the manifold. There's oil residue on the manifold, so that's why the manifold cracked. Now, I'd be inclined to believe them, but the first manifold they sent me wasn't finished welding at the collector. So it had a massive leak in it when we went to start the car. The replacement for that manifold, it worked, but it also cracked around one of the tubes. Now, I was in a hurry to get my car back together. It was mid-drift season then, so I decided to just buy another one. Now, this new one that I bought, number 3, was it lasted 2 drift events before one of the cracks right here. One of the cracks, that's this manifold. It lasted 2 drift events before I noticed this crack starting to form. Now, when I noticed this crack starting to form, that's what they were saying. That this all the residue here. That's all oil. But it's not oil. It is exhaust manifold repair putty that was supposed to repair the crack in the manifold, but it didn't, because obviously it gets too hot with the turbo and blah, 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 whatever. Nobody cares about that. But it's just heat. It's just heat. Heat and sheet metal, they don't mix. That's all it is. So I reached out to CX Racing. They recommended that I should go with a higher quality product for my race car. So that's what I'm doing. So I got this manifold It's a divorced or twin scroll manifold. It's a top mount, and it's from Spa Performance Turbo. It's got a 44 millimeter wastegate, and it's also nice and divorced. It's made in Brazil, and I like this flange setup. Obviously you can tell it's a cast manifold versus a tubular manifold, just because I'm tired of them cracking. I'm tired of having to swap out the turbo manifold, and this is a cheaper, easier, smarter solution, I would imagine, just because it's far less likely to crack being a cast manifold. Now, I'm not sure how much more heat it's going to generate in the engine bay, but we'll see when we get there. Obviously, I have a vented hood, so I'm not too concerned about the heat management. The car always did pretty well, and I also went back to a clutch fan setup, so that will also help out with the cooling. So should be pretty good. I'm going to throw this manifold on with the new, or not new, but wastegate setup, and see if or how much the downpipe needs to be modified to fit up to the rest of the exhaust. But that's really going to be the biggest hurdle, is getting the downpipe to mate to the turbo with the new manifold, because obviously they're different brands. They're gonna be a little bit different, but they're not really all that different. The angle on them is fairly similar, so we might be in luck, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up. So let's see if we have to lift up the motor to get this manifold in. It doesn't look like we're going to have to. It looks like it might be a little lower profile. We might be able to sneak it in past the studs. But yeah, that's the goal for tonight, is to see if the exhaust works. If the exhaust works, that's great. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to have to get the car towed to my fabricator so that he can get the downpipe situated with the new manifold. But this also works out for my wastegate too, because now not only do I get to swap out the cracked manifold, but I get to have the wastegate actually dumping all the way to the ground instead of just dumping at the downpipe, which is a potential fire hazard. So let's get to it. So I got these gaskets in for the manifold, and I was like, oh no, they crush a little bit. These might blow out with any like back pressure from the turbo. So I just looked at my old ones and I was like, maybe I can just reuse the old ones. And I was like, oh, they're the same thing. So the new ones will be fine. Nothing to worry about. So let's slap these guys on here. But we do put them with the soft side facing towards the manifold, so that anytime they come off of the head, there's nothing really to scrape off of the head, because it's a metal to metal surface and you only have to scrape off the manifold. Because that was another thing that I didn't like about this one. When I took it off, I noticed that like that side's touching and this side's got a nice little gap going on to it. So I know this floor is probably not the flattest, but that's definitely a pretty warped flange. Whereas this flange is split between each runner, so it doesn't really have the opportunity to warp like that. Not that it really is going to, because the cast is so much stronger than the tube, but it's a way better design. I'm not sure about this wastegate location. I feel like this might creep a little bit, but we'll see when we get there. Well, manifold's all bolted on, but do you see the I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get light in there. Well, yeah, just trying to find hardware for it, and hang on, let me stick my magnet in here. And pull the bolt out of the manifold that I dropped. God. It's not the right bolt either. Well, exhaust is all connected. See down there the V-band for the downpipe to the mid pipe is on. And that's the gap we're working with. Of course, it couldn't be just straight on. That would just be too easy. So hopefully he can make something work out of this, and I don't have to have him remake the whole downpipe. And hopefully he can fit me in before the 25th, because that kind of sucks. I was hoping it was going to be a little closer than that. Because as it is, even if I just wanted to run open downpipe, the downpipe doesn't fit to the turbo. This section right here is not right. Okay, well, back to trying to get the turbo clocked so I can get the oil feed and drain to be at the proper angle. Because as it is right now, it is not going to drain properly, and I'm going to end up with a smoked turbo. Oh my goodness. Finally, success. So, that thing was in there. So I'm going to try and clean this up as good as I can, because that was ridiculous to get out. Not that I want to have to take it off again soon, but wow. That was crazy. I guess there's a reason why people don't drive their nice cars in the wintertime. But, oh well. I have too much fun not to drive it. Well, I lost track of time, and it is way past my bedtime. It's 2:43 in the morning, Saturday. I did not mean to stay this late working on my car, but sometimes it just happens when you're trying to get stuff done. So I ended up getting the intercooler piping all hooked up. I ended up getting the center housing separated from the turbo and got it clocked properly, and also set up the drain line for the turbo. So I have it coming straight down off the turbo to a 90 at the frame rail. Now I'm gonna order a flexible hose, like a flexible metal hose for this part. For can I get it up there? Nope, can't get it up there. So I'm gonna order a flexible metal hose for that instead of the long dash 10 AN straight piece. I think having a flexible hose and a straight or 45 would be better than having the dash 10 90, but we'll see. It should be all right. It very much goes down. I have it wrapped and I have it decently clearanced from the manifold, which is mainly the part that I'm most concerned about, is it being near the manifold. But it should be okay. And then I have a 45 at an upward angle going into the timing cover. The intercooler piping, I was able to make this piece work. All I ended up doing to make it work is put the coupler up further on the compressor housing, and I have this pipe up further. So really the only difference is the turbo sits down a little bit and a little bit more forward. And the more forward isn't all that much because my intercooler piping is still in the same spot. The intercooler piping still fits beautifully. But the exhaust is definitely exhaust definitely needs some help. Now I'm hoping, because it's got to sit up a little bit more. So in reality, we're gonna have to chop some out of the bottom, off the bottom, and redo the V-band, and then a little extension piece here once we have the height right. But it's right there. I mean, I gotta plug the O2 sensor in. I have to get the V-band for the wastegate, should be coming in tomorrow, and then I'll be able to mount that. And I already have the line ran for the wastegate off of this intercooler piping, so we're good to go once I get that downpipe done. Not as bad as I thought it would be. Definitely annoying that I can't just reuse the downpipe, but I'm glad it's not as bad as I thought. So I gotta get this car over to the fabricators now so I can have a downpipe made for this turbo, or this manifold, I guess. But that's it. I need to go get some sleep. I'm debating whether I just go sleep in the shop for a little bit in the office, or if I actually go home and sleep a little bit. I'm supposed to have a customer tomorrow or some point this weekend. I haven't confirmed with him what day he's coming by, but I'm happy we're one step closer to going drifting. New manifold is in. The fixed crack in the coolant tank is in. I made a new hose for it because it was just going from here directly over this and down to this nipple, and I did not like that. So I used the factory hose, which has a 90 in it, to kick it down off of the radiator. I don't have, yes, I know I don't have any clamps on it yet. Obviously, it's not done. These are also coolant lines, so doesn't matter that I don't have clamps on yet. I'll deal with that when I get to bleeding it. But yeah, so it kicks it down underneath all those AN lines and back and around up to the reservoir. So I like that routing a lot more, but I'm babbling. I am so tired. I need to go to bed. Have a good night, guys.